Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have so much fun today because we're going to be talking about how to get your message out to people, especially in a time when we are not meeting, we're not going to seminars, we're not going to all sorts of things. So please join me in welcoming Nancy Giere to our program today. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here today.
Great. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So after a lifetime in the corporate training world, Nancy knows how businesses operate, and she isn't afraid to shake things up. Her unique perspective, combined with 25 plus years of experience, has empowered her with fresh insight and the industry's best kept secrets that she's ready to share with us. On a lifelong campaign against boring training, she uses the power of storytelling and light-hearted humor to create an engaging, fun, and interactive environment. Masterfully intertwining comedic humor with life lessons, her stories make learning stick. Nancy has worked with the biggest names in corporate America, and I saw a lot of those on your website, like Johnson Controls, Harley Davidson, and Northwestern Mutual. So again, Nancy, welcome.
I am very glad to be here to talk with you about one of my favorite topics.
Perfect. I love it. Well, I always like to get us in the Wayback Machine and have my guests talk to us about where they came from and how they discovered that this is their passion in life. So lead us in that direction.
Wow, the Wayback Machine's going to go way back.
You started when you were 4, we know.
Exactly. Well, I was working for an insurance subsidiary of a bank.
Okay.
And this was a time when things were being deregulated and banks could sell insurance products. And my boss said, you're a good talker. Why don't you handle the training of the account representative so that they can learn how to add insurance into the mix of typical banking services. So I just did it. And I really enjoyed it. And then I went on from there and took another job in a brokerage firm, similar type of work, but I was just going off of instinct. And then I landed at a place, it's probably been bought and sold a million times since then, in Northern Illinois called Applied Learning. And there I learned about instructional design, which is really the foundation for creating training materials. And I had the opportunity to be really an apprentice. I had a quality assurance manager. I had a regular manager. So everything that I did, I got consistent feedback on. And they also allowed us to participate in a master's degree program that we did as a lunch and learn type of format.
Nice.
So it was just this combination of events that I'm really grateful for because it really grounded me in what I do. And then from there, I just went on to work for different corporations in designing all different types of programs. Back in the day when there was these things called 3 1/4 inch discs.
Oh yes. Oi.
Floppies. I don't know it was 3 1/2 or 5 1/4, but anyway, that's how far back it goes. And so I look pretty good, don't I?
Yes. Well, like we said, you started when you were 4.
I did. So but it's been really the whole trajectory of my career. But I just had that one moment of, hey, get up in front of a group of people and teach. And then everything happened after that.
Cool.
Which sort of brought me around doing work inside of corporations, is training in every job that you can imagine. And then going out on my own, where I still do work with corporations, but I also work with smaller businesses and entrepreneurs as well.
Great.
To help them kind of move things along. I just did a retreat not too long ago of several people, mostly authors, speakers, and coaches, and helping them take, what are their great ideas, and how can they then turn it into training? So then that's been a lot of fun, because we're in a time where really anybody can create an online course.
Right.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, because anybody can do it, but should anybody do it?
Yeah. And there's not a lot of design or thought put into it. And it's harder to recover, I think, when you're trying to create an online experience than when you're in front of a room and live.
Right. Right. Well, in the intro, I talked about the fact that as we're recording this, we are still in the pandemic.
Yes.
We're not meeting. Companies are, for the most part, if they, are an office environment, their employees are out. They are working remotely. So, long gone are the days, at least for now, of the captive audience where you crammed them into a conference center and said, here, watch this. And you had the trainer at the front. And we're not attending conferences. I'm not even seeing them in person being offered. So of course, my first question is, because of all of that, have you been really busy training people how to do remote learning?
It's been a very busy time, and remote learning is the primary way to go right now. I think one of the challenges is it's with the pandemic, it's hard to bring people together. And it's hard to do what the hybrid models that are popping up. I went to the National Speakers Association conference in July in Las Vegas. I feel like I had this window where I got out.
I know.
But part of the people were there in person and part were remote. And there were challenges to keep both people engaged. And so that's been happening. It's, how can we balance it? But now a lot of different events, they're pulling back and they're doing more virtual and less of the hybrid, because they don't want the risk of necessarily booking the space. Right. And then, something happens. Oops. So I have to wonder if some people are starting to put in their contracts that, if there's a, COVID epidemic, another outbreak, another
you still
variant,
have to pay me, or at least a percentage or
work?
something.
But so even if the world does, and I shouldn't say if, when the world completely opens up again, let's hope, right? Virtual learning is always going to be in the mix. And it's a good way to do level setting. So, for example, I work with people that are coaches, and oftentimes they've got the same intake process. They have the same series of questions that they ask every time they bring in a new customer. So why not set something up, all that information that they do over and over and over again, let the person go through that independently, so when they actually meet with them, they can work at a deeper level.
Right. They've pre-prepared.
Yeah. And that's so true. And there's certain types of training, though, that will always have to be done in person. And that's more of the skill base. So if I think of some time that I spent at Pacific Gas and Electric working on their welding curriculum, you can teach all the math skills that they need to know how to, the pipe fitting part of it. But they've got to actually pick up the torch. Yeah.
And they're not doing that in their spare bedroom.
Right. They actually have to and they've got, if somebody has to watch them, somebody has to evaluate, somebody has to look at the final outcome. So when you have programs like that, you've got to figure out how to do it in person. Right. And what happened there is the groups they pulled back for a bit, but then the group sizes got smaller so that you could maintain the social distancing. Although those guys, they're fully,
they're masked no matter what. Yeah.
So, but it's going to be interesting as we move forward. And the challenge that people are going to have is, because more and more people are putting courses online, well, what do you do to make yours stand out? What do you do to make it engaging? Right. And have people not just after maybe the first lesson or two go, yeah, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. Even if they paid quite a bit for it, they're like, yeah. Yeah. I'll watch it tomorrow.
Yeah. And then tomorrow never comes. Right. So we have to think, how can we be binge watch worthy?
Yeah, that's it. How can we be Mad Men or, whatever.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's, I am assuming, and this is, we have nothing to base this on, but I'm assuming that going forward, we really are going to stay with a lot of the remote things that we've been doing. Yes. They've been working. Yeah, there are times where it's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit challenging, but I think in many cases, companies are going to figure out, hey, this saves us money. We're not renting the conference center. We're not renting the space. We're not having people fly to all of these conventions. So, they don't have that airfare. They don't have that hotel. They don't have the lost time while they're there. Because, when we go to conferences and things, and especially if they were, any type, actually, there's a lot of downtime. There's really only a certain little period of time where you're watching the speaker, learning from them. The rest of the time you're wandering around, you're in your hotel, you're going out to eat, all those various things. And so when we can do that remotely, and then they can go back to work or, whatever it is, I think businesses are really going to say, hey, this is great. Plus, if you are an organization that has employees in multiple locations, I mean, they have to do this, and they have been to some degree, but I think now they finally figured out, oh, we really have to do this.
Well, what I think is an interesting way to look at it is there's some costs are going to go down. There's going to be some costs that are going to increase if you're doing a virtual meeting where you got to think about what's the technology you need.
Yeah, your tech had better be darn good.
Conference platform, the tech has got to work. So there's a cost to all of that. But where I think there's a big advantage is most times, most people that are working, let's just say they're in a corporation or really any size organization, you have to make the decision how many people can go and how many events can I participate in.
Yeah, you're going to send one person from the department and expect them to tell, train, teach everybody else that they work with.
With a virtual event,
they all go.
More people, everybody can go because you don't have the as much time off the job. So there's always, you can figure for most events, you're going to lose 2 days to travel. Well, if you can save those 2 days of productivity because people are doing it from their desk, it's worth it.
Right.
That's a huge savings right there. And then, on the other side of it, there's the question for the people that are actually doing the programs is, well, what's the value of my intellectual property?
Right. Yeah. Because we did used to charge an upcharge for the travel, all of those various things. If we were going somewhere, it meant we couldn't do anything else. So, you had to charge a fee that represented that. And so now if you can give 4 trainings in a day, are you going to cut your fee by 3/4? Right? Did I do that math right?
Well, definitely where you're going to land with your fees is it's all personal choice. But, if my fee to do a presentation, like I'm just saying is, let's just pick $5,000 just to pick
it's easy to do the math on
right?
Those.
It's easy to do the math. If that's my fee to do a presentation, I'm going to be delivering you that information. That my fee's my fee. Now there's no travel costs. And some people may look at this a little bit differently, but I think once you make your investment in your studio space, you get your microphone, I have a nice light over here, that's a one-time investment. But the other part of it, that's a new variable cost that I think is really important that people need to factor in, which could change the fee, is to have a digital producer on with you. So when I presented my program about how to build training programs at the NSA convention in Las Vegas this year, I had a digital producer on to manage the chat, to keep track of everything. So her time is worth something too. So I think the things are going to be shifting in terms of what do we do? How do we bundle it all? And I have to tell you, I was so grateful to have my good friend Dorothy Erlanger on there with me, because what happened is when people were coming in, everybody was off mute.
Oh, and,
no. Yeah. So it's like, and everybody's coming in late. And it was kind of hilarious because I'm doing this from Caesar's Palace. So I have my Caesar's Palace purple and gold background.
Oh, of course. Yes, yes.
Everybody else had the same background as me. So most of the people, it was virtual, but they were in their hotel rooms or in the lobby, and some of them might have been at the pool or the bar, I don't know. But it was a really different type of experience because it was a hybrid event. And I crossed my fingers, said a prayer that the Wi-Fi would hold.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And it did.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. Not every session had the same success. And so there's that's a huge, if you are setting people up to participate virtually, the tech's got to be perfect.
Yep. And you mentioned Wi-Fi. I mean, one of the things that we may start saying is it's got to be hardwired. We are not going to depend on your Wi-Fi. And for at least the camera, and your computer. I mean, depending on what all you're using. But yeah, I mean, we might start saying it's got to be hardwired, folks. Where we can't do the Wi-Fi part.
Yeah, that's going to become increasingly important. And then there's very interesting platforms out there like Hopin that are starting to, they have elements in there to try to mimic the networking part, because that's the thing that I miss.
That's what we miss.
Those hallway conversations, the connecting with peers or someone that you really would love to learn from. You get a chance to talk with them, whatever that might be. That's the part that's hard to recreate. And platforms like Hopin, they have these little virtual breakout rooms that you can go to. You can even you can design it all different types of ways. So if there's a particular topic that you're interested in, people that are interested in the same topic will all come to the same room. So there's a lot of cool things that are going to be happening. And it amazes me just how far these different platforms have come.
I know. The tech is just incredible. I think we were getting there 18, 19 months ago, and then, we have to get there now.
I mean, and large organizations have been doing e-learning and virtual meetings because many of them have, people all over the country, all over the world, in fact. So it's been part of it. And now it's expanded into smaller businesses too. I mean, with the, platform like we're on today, we're on Zoom. Anybody can use Zoom and look great.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is with platforms like Zoom, you can do so much, and now you have to have the bandwidth. It's funny. I tell people I don't do a green screen. I don't even do the blur feature because I like my computer, but it doesn't have quite enough oomph to generate it right. So I get the halo, I get the half face, I get, all of those various things.
Oh, I think, and most people, I do not like the virtual background. No. Unless you have the capability to look like a news. I mean, when I watch TV, I'm like, oh, look at that. I want to look like that.
It's most people, they don't have that.
Just share kind of a little sidebar here. So I dabble a bit in stand-up comedy. And some of my cohorts this year, we all agreed we were going to audition for America's Got Talent. So the audition was virtual, and I was astounded looking at. I was in a room with 6 other people. We're all auditioning, and it's kind of, you get to kind of feed off of each other. The number of people that had terrible lighting, terrible sound, and okay, get this: if you're going to be auditioning to be on TV, you might want to make your bed.
Yeah. And not have the camera looking up your nose or at just the top of your head. I'm like, can you not tell that we can only see the top of your head?
And I think it's a good lesson because some of these people were very talented, but you couldn't tell.
Right. Because you got sidetracked with all of that.
And it was
a
way,
stuff.
I mean, it certainly it was one way of culling the people that were participating. Now, I made it through 2 rounds, I'm happy to say, but you won't see me on TV this year.
Bummer.
Who knows?
Yep. Yeah.
I think you just you don't have to put a lot into having a nice background. Right. I mean, I have a very simple setup here. I've got my picture behind me. That's it. Maybe I'll add in some other things. Yours is kind of get inside.
I had a Zoom consultant. We had her on the program. She walked me through because I had sayings behind me, inspirational sayings. And she said they were too distracting. And we had to watch the books. Are people going to go, what is she reading? And we've all done that, right? The sports guy's on and we're like, what's he reading? Or worse, a politician. And she said, do the plant. She said do blue because my microphone and your microphone is blue. Plus I have very dark blue eyes. And so she said, we want the whole thing to be blue to play up on that. And I should always wear blue or a pattern that has blue in it. And yeah, I mean, that's simple, easy peasy. My whole setup here, including the mic, including the camera, is under $500.
Yeah. And that's a great way to start. And add into this. So if people are doing the virtual presentation, so I was actually doing a presentation for you today, I'd be sharing a screen.
Right.
So I've got very nice slide deck, and that all fits together, and everything looks good and is branded well. And the next place, which a lot of people are working successfully, I've been having a little bit of a challenge myself because I got to be first in line to get the new Mac when they come out.
I've heard. See, I'm not a Mac person, but somebody the other day was saying, the other day they said September 1st, so clearly it's a little bit late. But the new
Mac. That's on my radar because I've had a problem with getting a lot of fan noise, which is just a situation. But there's great tools that you can use for a Mac. It's Ecamm, and I think it's OBS for a PC. Where then you can add another layer of production on what you're doing. So I could have, a trailer going across the bottom of the screen. It can be a little circle off to the side. You can move yourself around on the screen. There's so you can raise up your production value. Right. So that's like a next level up to go. And
or have two cameras. I had somebody on my podcast one time and they had two cameras and I was like, wowza.
And this little tool,
your little control deck,
the Stream Deck, which then allows you to transition easily from being on camera to so everything is very smooth and very polished. And that's the next level up to go. And again, we're not talking about a big investment. I think my Stream Deck was $150. The Ecamm software, it's a monthly subscription. I think it's 15, I don't know, 15, 20, but so it's not a big investment to really level up and have a great production quality. And all of this is really good, but you have to have great content that you're going to show. And that's a lot where I play with people is, okay, what's your content? How can we deliver this in a way that's going to showcase you in the best way? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be memorable, and people are going to want to do more with you.
Right. And you mentioned a little bit ago that you were doing stand-up comedy. And I've had people on before and talked with people who have said that if you are really going to do this and be good at it, you should take some improv classes. And, and it's not that you're taking improv from the audience, but it's just kind of how to do all that. And it's funny, I have a cousin and then his fiance are graduates of Second City, and they teach improv. And it's just, it's so interesting to think of how that works in a business setting. So talk to us a little bit about that, because, we've always been told now you cannot make jokes in a speech, a presentation, a training, because you're going to offend somebody or, all those things. But there's certainly ways to do it. So talk to us about why having some comedy in there really, really, really helps.
Well, certainly, I think people can be offended by the language that you choose to use. So of course, the blue comedy is off the table in most.
And there are some public speakers that we know are going to drop the F-bomb.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
exactly. That's just
Guy
part
Kawasaki.
Of their, it's just part of their
their Gary V.
Well, what it is important, the best way to bring in humor is to look at what's relatable. What's happening? What are the kind of the stories that are going on in the company that people go, oh yeah, because you can't help but laugh at some of the things that are going on around you. So to kind of really bring in those stories, and sometimes all you got to do is people will just go, yeah, I get that. And it's not as much about coming up with the joke and the punchline. As it is about kind of reacting to what's happening in a place. Because I was at a conference and they brought out like this lunch that was very meager. Oh. And everybody knew.
And they're all like,
and they had Dale Irvin, who's a professional summarizer, and he just will look at what's happening and he'll tell jokes about it. he mentioned something about the lunch, and everybody's laughing because we all shared that common experience about this meager lunch. You know, it was waiting for more loaves and fish, please, or something. I don't know what he said. It was funnier that I can come up with it in the moment, but it's what's happening that you can poke fun at it. That is something we're all sharing, rather than if I were to poke fun at you or make fun of you, right? But if it what's the shared experience? What makes people, where does the eye rolling happen? We're going, I can't believe that happened again.
Right. But you're not saying, Bob did such and such and so, and poking fun at Bob. It's, like you said, it's the general shared experience.
Yeah. That's where the humor can come from.
Right.
And it's the most powerful. I think that's why the comedians like Jerry Seinfeld are so wonderful, because it's observational humor. It's, they did one episode and it was about, how to park the car.
And you're like, how can they do, they did however many episodes that they did in total of, what did they say? The show about nothing.
Waiting to get into a restaurant or whatever it might be, or,
and we've all gone there. We're like, oh, that's me. How did they know that happened to me? And part of it too is when you're live, having the chops to be able to deal with things that happen. And usually it is best to do it with a little bit of humor. And we've, as speakers, we've all had stuff happen. We've had somebody drop a serving tray, right? And everybody looks at it. So you might as well address it.
Yeah.
Now you're not going to say, oh my God, I can't believe she dropped that tray again. I bet she does that every time. Because that's hurtful. But when you say, okay, everybody look, everybody clap, because that's kind of the thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we go on, it's just knowing when to have that little bit and then go on.
Well, I think improv is very helpful, as well as people that are involved in Toastmasters, where there's the table topics, or somebody throws a question at you and you need to respond in the moment. Those are both great things to prepare you when the things happen around you, or to be when you're doing your Q&A. I was part of a comedy event earlier this year, and the host was new to doing all of this, and the person before me, she wanted to mute the audience, but she kept muting him. And I followed on, and I said something like, wow, Craig, I can really feel your pain. I think I was on mute most of my marriage. And then I went into my
and then you go on, right?
But, I responded to what was going on around me. And oftentimes when you're speaking, you've got to take in what's going on around you, or can you tie what you're talking about to what has happened before you?
Right.
Making those connections. Sometimes there was a group of people tap dancing behind me when I was training somewhere one time.
Oh, that's good.
You can't just pretend that's not happening.
No. So you do a little dance too, right?
Yeah. So you respond to it, and you move on. And these are all parts of the things in the delivery. And I think when we're in the virtual format, you can look for things that are happening. There's always it's so funny that people still don't know how to mute and unmute.
I know.
It's like, and I'm guilty.
I want to sign. I really want to sign, because I saw a shirt. Well, that wouldn't work. But I want to sign, you're on mute.
Yeah. Or things that are, but it's just, it's about, I think what those skills teach you is to be in the moment and to get out of your head and have what you want to impart come from here, which is, of course, when people are coming up with on the preparation and the design for the program, they you can get so caught up in I got every fact. I got to tell them all this information. And you don't stop and think about what's the most important information I need to provide in this, whether it's a live program or a virtual program. When they're done, what do I want them to know or be able to do? And everything I talk about needs to line up to that. All this other information that I have is great, and that's another story for another day.
Yeah. But yeah, if I don't get that slide, well, the world won't come to an end.
Right.
But
and no one's going to know.
but yeah, I mean, that's one of the again, whether you're in person or not, I mean, knowing those important things. And, and I think that's, especially when people are new, they've got their outline, they've got their death by PowerPoint, they've got everything. And, and then if something happens, it gets them totally off. I mean, they just, they went from point 1 to point 2 and they don't know how to do point 3 because,
how to get back.
Yeah. So, obviously practice, preparation. Right. I mean, all those things, some people can do improv and off the cuff. But, they have probably still at least taken notes and done some things so that they know, okay, what is it? Here's what I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you again. So they know those things and then they just kind of fill in everything else.
Right. And a lot of it comes down to really good design. And I like to think of it as intentional design is the frame that I've been looking at. And as we've moved into this virtual platform, people they don't really think about necessarily that, now we're in this box, right? Now we could plan things where I could be positioned if I was here more as a presenter. I'd be standing up. I'd have
you could have 2 cameras and we could watch you pace.
But what's important to do ahead of time is to really look at what are you designing? What platform are you designing for? Are you designing for Zoom? Are you designing for e-learning? Right. And what I'd like to have people is to step back and think about it from the perspective of, let's look at entertainment. There's a book that starts and the book could be turned into a play. They're going to be different experiences because it's a different medium. Then the play perhaps could be turned into a movie, or maybe the play goes right to a movie. But when you go to a movie, it's different than the book. Right.
It's not read like you're just reading the book.
You've got an opportunity to show visuals. You have an opportunity to be in different locations. You can play around perhaps more with time and space. The characters might change. Some things are cut out. Some things are added in because it works better to advance the story in a movie than in a book.
Right.
And some books, if you try to just take them and directly translate them to a movie, I'm going to be here for 8 hours. I can't do it. And so when you're thinking about moving from being in person to being either online or virtual, you have to think about those same elements.
Ah, okay.
So what are my constraints and what are my opportunities? And that is a key component. If people don't remember anything else from this interview, please remember that. Really design with intention.
Right.
And when you're and think ahead. If you want to have multiple delivery platforms, what's going to be the most complicated and involved? Build for that one first and then work backward to things that are easier.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the very start, I wrote down live and question mark. And my question was going to be, is there a difference between when you give a live presentation and when you're doing it online? And then, of course, there's the online where it's a live interactive thing, or you're recording it. And so, I was percolating in my brain that you needed to prepare differently, and you answered that perfectly.
Yeah. And one thing that I get very frustrated by is if I sign up for a webinar, I think it's going to be live. Many times they're recorded.
Right.
And they don't tell you that they're recorded until you're there. So the questions that are being answered are from the people that participated in the actual webinar rather than the people that are there. I tested this once because I was looking at the people's names in the chat and who they were asking. So there's nothing wrong with recording your webinars and packaging them up and selling us. Certainly people have done a whole lot of that in the last 18
we've
months.
seen tons of that. If you can't be there live, you'll get the link later.
Yeah. And if I'm coming in later, this thing is already passed and I'm not, I didn't participate, but I see it maybe 3 months later. Personally, I'd like to know that it's a recording. And there's an opportunity when you're planning your webinar to have an even better recording, if you really look at how am I going to break this up? What are the key parts? And put in deliberate pauses throughout the webinar. So you could go along, you know, then you pause, you take questions, you pause, you smile, and then you transition into the next section. Just that short pause allows you, when you go in to edit it into individual modules, it gives you a clean place to cut.
Right. You're not having to cut somebody in mid-sentence.
Yeah. Or oftentimes people will go in and they'll do the Q&A, and then they just ramble into what the next section is going to be without a clean break. I also think it's a great idea to cut the Q&A out and get a transcript of it, and then produce a frequently asked questions document, which then takes that course and it skinnies it down
Right.
to perhaps more manageable elements. Because if I'm not there in the webinar experiencing the Q&A, I don't care.
Right. Well,
that's just my opinion, my humble opinion on this topic.
You know, it's and Q&A is difficult no matter what. You know, if you're live, you know, unless you are bebopping around real quick and handing somebody a microphone, you know, a lot of times you have no idea what was asked. And I don't care how many times you tell the speaker, please repeat the question. They never remember to do that, or they repeat it in a different way, and all of those things. You know, and when we're doing, say, a Zoom, and people just put their questions in chat, you know, what drives me nuts is the speaker will just say, oh yeah, Bob just asked about, and you know, and we don't get the actual question, or sometimes they don't even say it at all. They'll just say, oh, yeah, that step is to do this and this and this. And I'm like, what's he talking about? I'm lost. Yeah. So Q&A is very difficult to do well.
It's difficult, yeah. And I do think that's where having a digital producer comes in handy.
Right.
Because you can have that person watch the chat. Then they can, you know, you decide kind of when they're, how you're going to handle them, them breaking in. They can look at the questions. They can say something like, we've had a whole lot of different questions today about microphones.
Right.
Can you share your thoughts on
so you get one question about microphones.
But you're acknowledging that a number of people are interested in this. Or there's sometimes that the questions are like, what?
Yeah, we got lost on point 2.
But you look at it and you go, I have no idea what you're saying in the way somebody has typed it in. Now, this can be risky, but in that moment, you can say, could you come off mute and ask your question?
Right. Yeah.
Because I think I may have a follow-up question to be clear on where you're going. And it's always risky to take people off because they might always go back on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is the nice thing about Zoom. You can plunk them back onto mute.
Yeah, you can kick them out if you want.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, I mean, it is difficult. You know, it, like we were saying, you know, people, they ask half their question and you're on mute, you know, and then they get flustered and don't, you know, and they don't remember what their question was or whatever. I mean, yeah, Q&A is just tricky no matter what.
Yeah. So and again, it's all about being able to respond in the moment.
Right. Now, you know, we've talked about it, but obviously the absolute most important thing is that you have to have engaging content. So how the heck do you do this? Because we all think what we're talking about is the greatest thing since War and Peace, and everybody wants to hear it. And blah.
Yeah. You know, probably heard this before, the whole idea of facts tell and stories sell. The first way we can make content engaging is by telling a story. I used to do some thought leadership type of training, and this was for an accounting software firm. And we would have different accountants. They were the presenters. And boy, they have a lot of facts. They got a lot to share.
Oh, yeah.
And
those numbers people are going to give you numbers.
But what's fascinating about what they do is they really help a lot of people. And when I worked there, I thought, well, let's bring in the whole idea of the hero's journey. Their client is the hero, and the accountant doing the presentation is the guide. That's the sage advice that came in along the way. They gave them insight into how to improve their business. So they could come in and they could tell about how they do work with e-commerce customers, for example. They could talk about what it was like before, what it was, how they helped them, and then what was the powerful result. Now, if you tell me a story, I'm going to remember the story.
Because I'm going to put myself in that story.
Yes. We relate to stories. We've been telling stories as long as we've been able to speak, and maybe even before when we, the cave paintings on the wall, they were telling a story. Those stories have been how we've connected. If I tell you my story, you're going to want, oh yeah, I got, it's like, da, da, da. It's like we're constantly exchanging stories. So that's one part to look at. For every point that you have, where can you bring in a story to illustrate the point? Can you have a story be a thread to go through it? I'm looking at a project now. I can't say the name of the client.
It's one of those biggies, we're sure.
One of these, yeah. We're going to be working on an overarching case study that we'll use to guide people through. So we're going to talk about how this particular company, as they grew in size and scale, how they were able to bring in the products so the customer's bringing in the company's products to grow their business. So we're going to tell their story as it goes through, and I think it'll be quite effective.
Right.
The next part to look at is oftentimes people don't want to say type in the chat, but when you say type in the chat, that's bringing people in. So you want to have a good question to ask people, or something that's going to be relatable. Like, why are you here today?
Yeah. Where are you from? Things that they're going to answer.
And I saw something really cool the other day that I want to try from a company called Mentimeter. And Mentimeter, now you can integrate with Zoom, and it's a great where you can pose questions. You give people a link or a QR code so they can either do it on their computer or on their phone, and it takes them into a question. Well, one thing that they do that I love is you can then take everybody's responses and then display a word cloud.
Ah, cool.
So that brings in the collective. What I saw the other day that I want to try the next time I open something up is they have a map of the world, and people can pin.
Oh, very cool. Here's where I am.
So instead of just saying, hey, type in the chat, where y'all from? Who's in the house today? You can then have people come in, and that just is another way to keep people engaged and involved. And they've got a lot of interesting ways that you can pose questions or polls that go beyond just the basic features of Zoom. And Zoom is brilliant, and that that's one of the apps that they integrate with. So you can work with it inside the platform more easily.
Very cool.
I'm looking at, so it's looking for items like that where you engage people, where they're participating more. There is another thing that I used not too long ago. It was created by Amy Clymer, and they're Clymer cards, and they're it's interactive. So you can she's got cards that you can buy that are generic. They're beautiful artwork. So there's an image on the card, and you can have people look at the cards and say, perhaps you're opening up a presentation, which one of these cards accurately describes how you're feeling today. And then they can write a little something on the card, and then everybody gets to see the responses. And it's a very cool, simple tool to get people in and get them engaged. So every time you're looking at something you're working on, you want to look at it and say, what's the best way for me to illustrate this point? Is this the time that I want to bring in some type of interaction from the audience? And you want to be doing something interactive every few minutes just to keep people on,
because
on board.
we are going to be.
I have another screen over here.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was just thinking. I've got another monitor over here, and I'm like,
I can be checking my mail.
I can just check my email. I can. Oh, look at this video, squirrel.
Yeah, I'll just kind of be half listening to whatever's going on here.
I know. And you really know when everybody turns their video off, right? You're like, lost them.
Yeah. And people love the opportunity to go into a breakout room and have a small group discussion, because that's where we can have that opportunity to connect and to network and learn more about the people that we're participating with. I did a 2-day retreat a couple months ago where I brought people together and we went through the whole course design process from start to finish. And there were times that I had them doing things on their own, just quiet reflection and take some notes. And then there were times where then we put them into a breakout room and they would have a particular item to discuss in the breakout room. Then they would come back and they would share with the larger group, which is not that different from what you would do in an in-person session. So you can kind of look at, what did I do when I was in person? And given the opportunities and limitations of the virtual platform, how can I transition that particular type of exercise? And just it'll come to you how you can make that all happen.
And there's actually more things that we can do on the online world than you can in person.
I was in a session one time and they said, and this probably more, maybe it works better with women than with men, but whoever has the best shoes can start. Now it worked on one hand because a couple of people were wearing fabulous shoes. Now there were people like me, I'm barefoot.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I guess I don't get to. Or you can come up with, if you want to do a scale, maybe you can come up with a post a ruler that has the different types of from not satisfied to very satisfied, or whatever the scale might be, and people can mark where they are on the scale.
I love it. Yeah,
to really just think about it and go, okay, what's and I would imagine to make some of these interactive elements. I have not explored this yet, as I'm getting more and more ideas. But after I looked at that map the other day, I thought, wow, what else could I do that people could interact with?
Right.
And there's probably some programmer on Fiverr somewhere.
That can do
that could build it for me. Because it would just be a question of sending people to a landing page to interact with it.
Yeah, and then have the tech able to bring it back and integrate it in your presentation.
And a lot of different applications that people interact with. There's, scan the QR code. So we were having people scanning QR codes and texting in the big rooms. And I'm like, woo, that's hot stuff. Well, you could do that here too.
Right. And of course, the key is practice first. When you're trying these new things, folks, this is not the time to have 50 people online, 5,000 people, whatever, and be going, now I think I click this button here. Well, somebody help me.
Let's press next and see what happens because no one is sure.
Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh. But yeah. Well, kind of along those same lines, is there a difference between webinars and online learning?
Yes. I think we've been using the term virtual and online to
kind of mush them all together.
It's all mushed together. The way to think about it is a virtual program or a webinar. I'm present. I'm delivering. People are in their little boxes. The Hollywood Squares thing is
we're doing the Brady Bunch.
But I'm here and I'm live. Then when you move into online learning, that is more of a self-study type of a format, if you will. The person is taking the course. They're sitting at their computer. They're going through a series of lessons. It could be something to read. It could be video, an interactive quiz, but there is not an instructor present to guide them through the process. And those are the types of programs where I think it's important to really have a good, solid design and plan and be as economical as you can be in your choice of words because people have a limited time that they're going to be able to focus.
Right.
So if you do a video, 5 to 7 minutes is a good window. Sometimes, if the content requires it, it can be longer, but to try to keep them short is
if it gets longer, think about breaking it into two.
Yeah, how can you break it into two? And then what can you do for people to have some sort of interactive activity in between? So it might be that they go through a video, they've got some kind of a PDF document where they need to go in and answer some questions. Maybe they've got to do some reflection. I do something about why virtual, why now? And have people write, why do they even want to get in this game?
Right.
Or writing something about what is your purpose. So that then engage, so they do that part, then they come back in and they watch the next segment of it.
Right. Well, and what's critical, I'm guessing, is that it absolutely has to be engaging and interesting, because if I'm sitting here at my desk and I've done, 15 minutes and, all this, and then I'm doing this, well, maybe I should check my email, or wait, look, there's somebody here, things like that. And I'm not, the next thought in my mind is not, I need to go back to what I was doing, and so that's where it absolutely has to be such engaging content that I'm going to write this down as fast as I can, because I want to see the next thing.
And it needs to be engaging, but it has to be something that people really want.
Right.
I really want to learn this. This is really important to me. That's number one. There's got to be a match between what is your offer and what does your client want to consume. That's number one. Then you want to look at, how am I going to structure this and keep it fun and engaging? And if you can make people laugh, that's all the better, because it just keeps, what's going to happen next?
Right. Yeah. It's such a fun challenge to be thinking about. And I think, as we were saying at the very start, so many people are now having to do this. Because we used to go and do trainings in person, whether it was in a company or, you were a consultant coming in, all of these various things. And so, we have to think about it. And of course, it can be daunting too, because we're thinking, oh my God, I have to do all of this. But it's, like you were saying, it's pretty simple. I mean, with a Mac, a lot of that software is built in. I had somebody the other day showing me, I can do this and this. And I was like, holy schmoly.
Yeah, it's a lot there. Well, it's important. And again, a lot of this comes back to good design and good planning. And if you can think it through, and you have all these ideas and they're all swirling around, and oh my gosh, where am I going to go? What's next? And one exercise that I like to take clients through is to do a brainstorming activity. And one of my favorite tools of all time, they're up here, the Post-it note.
Sticky notes.
The sticky note. And what you can do is your topics, just write them on a note, stick them up on a wall or a big piece of flip chart paper, and just keep putting them there, just sticking them and sticking them and sticking them. Then step back and look at it and go, how can I organize all of these great ideas? What's a good flow? What do I want to put into my course? What do I want to have as either a pre-read or some type of a post activity? Because you want to also look at, well, how does this fit into my whole customer journey? What's the funnel that I'm going to move people through from their first experience with me all the way through to the end? So to come up and just brainstorm, put them on the notes, put them on the wall, and then take them and structure them. And then the next step is to look at it from the angle of, okay, what content do I already have? What exists?
Right.
What form does it exist in? What is something I haven't written about at all? It's brand new. And then you can get real clarity around. I'm looking like I have something up here.
Yes, we're looking at it.
Then put it in a logical sequence. And then as you're building it out, you know what you've got to pull from, and you know what you need to build from zero.
Right. And
it's a
make
step.
it. Yeah. Oh yeah. And there are ways to make it fun, obviously for the participants too. I was just thinking, we did a thing with my husband's company where it was kind of a learning thing, because now he would have done this in person at a seminar, or a conference, but they didn't do it because of COVID. And so they thought, let's go ahead and do it. And so it was a wine tasting.
Yes.
and so we got in advance 3 different bottles of wine. Now they were little bottles of wine, and food that was paired with it. Now, the Georgia's sun kind of did a number on some of the food, if it sat out on your balcony for a while, but, and then the learning part was the sommelier. And he was saying, and so we had the pre-event chit chat, type of thing, and everybody got to know each other, and virtually no one was from the same company. I mean, this really was like you would be at that conference and you were just there. Now it was, clearly this was invitation only. I mean, I don't know how much it cost to send the wine, but, and then they would say, okay, now we want you to open the red so I could breathe, because we're going to talk about this one now. And so then we drank and we sipped, and we, of course, after the hour, we're pretty giggly, but it really was very cool because it drew us in, just like if we were there.
Right. Well, they had you were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you can get people where they're doing something and they're not just listening.
Right.
And, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to companies that have sent boxed lunches and, and have said, okay, now everybody get out your lunch. We're going to, and I mean, just all sorts of things. So it's not just that you're sending them the slides that they're supposed to print in advance or
Here's
whatever
your
it is.
500 pages.
Yeah. Send them something fun. And obviously there is a cost to that, but yeah, it's, what are ways that you can do it? And maybe it is just, something that a pre-read and it's, 50 jokes that you want them to read or something. Who knows?
But, for a retreat, it's perfect to send out some type of a swag box ahead of time. You can have some branded items in there. Then what could they be interacting with? I know someone, she has cards with expressions that you can hold up, or maybe there's flags that people can wave, or something to bring people in, or not. We're going to have our coffee break and everybody's is going to go and make their coffee. Yep. I participated in something similar. It was a corporate event, and it was how to make some type of a Mexican street taco. And it was fascinating to watch how she did this and to think, well, how could this translate into something else that I might work on? Because she had two cameras. She had one that was down
on the food,
on the food, and one on her that she would go back and forth. But she was walking us through the process. Okay, everybody, now we're gonna boil the tomatoes so we can peel them, or the peppers, whatever it was. But we did each phase of it, and how can, if you have a particular skill that you're teaching, do you need to have that type of an investment where you need a camera pointing down, something on you, or how can you just, even in this context, give people specific instructions in how to proceed, what to do next, so that I'm not necessarily just sitting, but perhaps I'm creating. So if I'm helping people build out a course, there's specific deliverables along the way, and I have them go through and, okay, let's work on doing our scope. And here's the key questions that you need to ask to come up with your scope. So they go off and they do that, and they come back. The beauty of that type of an activity is if people feel like I'm accomplishing something along the way.
They are truly participating.
They're not just listening, and they maybe have a bit of work done on their project. And I'm putting together, I don't have all the details together quite yet, but it'll be on my website soon. I'm going to do a 5-day challenge, and I want to have them do something every day in the challenge.
Very cool. I love it. I love it.
As a way to learn more about not only what to do, but what's the experience of working with me like.
Right. I love it. Well, speaking of that, oh my gosh, we are already at the top of the hour.
Oh my gosh.
And so, I'm sure that we've got a lot of people who know that they need to do this and went, So how do they connect with you, and what are the services that you provide?
Okay. Well, you can see my name on the bottom of the screen, and my website is nancygiere.com.
And so it's Giere.
Yes, that's right. And I can see my name right there. So anyway, that's the best way to find me there. There, I have, and I'll give you the link to this that you can put in the notes, but I have a program little book that I wrote, booklet, actually, I should say, 8 simple steps to create training that sells. And that gives kind of a whole framework of my process. And so I'm happy to let people have that to take a look at as a good place to start.
Great. And
I'm offering different webinars and programs all the time. So the best thing is to just check in on the website. And my email is nancy@nancygiere.com.
Perfect.
And if somebody wants to, go old school, you can call me. How about that? And that's 414-315-9809.
Cool. I love it. I love,
in the pandemic, I just need people to talk to, just saying.
I know. I started an online networking group just because I needed to see people. I'm like, and it has evolved into a true networking group. We have speakers, I mean, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it was like, oh my God, I need to see people.
I need to talk.
Yeah. You and me are a lot alike. We're very social.
I need to talk.
Yeah. And I'm not doing in-person networking and meetings. So, I'm living online now. It's the other day I had 6 Zooms. That is a little much in one day.
That's a lot.
But yeah, so cool. Well, oh my gosh, this really has been so much fun. And it's made me think about, should I even be doing it? Do I have content that people would care about? Right. That is the very first thing that
That's the first question.
About. Yeah. And that answer sadly might be no. But yeah, you don't want to put a whole bunch of work into it and then find that you get crickets. So think about that first. So I'll be thinking about, is there something people would care about?
A way to approach it.
Yep. So I love it. But, tell us, I want to talk with you again. So we'll have another fun discussion at some point.
All right.
But until then, what are some final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
The final thought that I want to leave everybody with is to really look at what are the platforms that are available to you? Mm-hmm. What opportunity do they give you? What limitations are there? And how can you take your brilliant ideas and explain them in the best way possible, given those different platforms? Really think about, what are the stories that you can tell? What are the activities that you can have people do? What can you do to help them actually get some real work done, whether they're participating with you in a webinar or in an online program?
Perfect. I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely delightful time talking with Nancy Giere. Can't wait to learn more from you. And until then, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.